It's so lovely to be back here at Warwick. It's really wonderful to be back at SAPC. It really feels like coming home. And I did suggest over lunch to a couple of people that I was going to junk the talk and just sit down and just have a chat. Because it does feel a bit like that when you come and speak at a group where you know so many people and you feel so comfortable. But thank you for your kind words, Helen. I wasn't sure I recognised myself in them, but thank you. Conflict of interest slide, you know, the good discipline stuff. Helen said it all, apart from the bits about being married to an engineer and a member of my local church. I say the engineer bit because I often come up with quite practical and pragmatic metaphors. And so, you know, I call a hammer a persuader. I know the uses of gaffer tape, WD-40, and turning things off and on again. So I'm quite a practical person. So, roughly what I'd like to do in the next 20 minutes or so is, for those of you who don't know what the Royal College of General Practitioners is, just give you a bit of a heads up, set the scene, what we're working on at the moment. I also jotted down a bit of a SWOT analysis on academic general practice as I was thinking about this talk, and I thought I'd share those reflections with you, and perhaps you would like to contribute to them or consider doing something for yourselves. So a bit of a state of the nation. Also looking forward and working together in collaboration. So all of those of you at the back, there's a zillion seats down the front. Please do come down the front. Don't be shy. I really don't bite. I don't have horns. And I want to talk a little bit at the end about sparkle, about joy in our professional practice and why we're in such a bad place and what we can all, every single one of us, do our part to make the NHS better, to make our professional lives better, and to help our more junior colleagues have a fulfilling and rewarding career. So that's the rough plan, and then hopefully plenty of time for questions afterwards if that works for you, but do shout out if it doesn't. So, as I talk about the Royal College of General Practitioners and what we think and believe, think about it in terms of your own organisations. I'm conscious many people in this room are not general practitioners. You work in the whole primary care family, you work in the whole academic family. I suspect that much of what I'm about to share, the next couple of slides, you will relate to, whatever your professional background. But our vision, my vision, is for excellence in general practice for patients worldwide. We know in the UK that we are world leaders in general practice, particularly so in academic general practice. What we do here impacts on patients around the world, make no mistake, and that is vital. With the heart and voice of general practice, we promote the principles of holistic generalist care in partnership with other healthcare professionals and in partnership with our patients. Committed to the equitable access to and delivery of high-quality, effective primary healthcare for all. Committed to the academic and practical development of high-quality general practice. We're not in it for mediocrity. We're not in it for just good enough. We are committed to excellence and quality. And I think as academics, that should be heartening. I hope you find it reassuring. And it's certainly the sort of stuff that allows me to sleep well at night, knowing that these are the values and this is the vision that we cling to, not some vision of just good enough. And members of the college, and again think as members of the SAPC, as members of what other professional bodies, does this sound about right? You're always learning, you're part of a community, you're taking care of yourself. And then now more than ever when things are tough, we need to take care of ourselves and put our own oxygen masks on first before we help others. But we are shaping the future and part of the political and professional conversation. I'll leave that up there as I talk. Professional bodies have a great responsibility to bring people together, to unify and unite, and I don't think that we've always done that. But the harder it is out there, the more important it is that we are together and united and we work for the greater good and put aside petty differences. It is so easy to squabble and to find petty differences, and it is so important to be professional and put those aside for the sake of the common aim. So that's what I would suggest as members of the Royal College are. But I hope for your own organisations, where they differ, that they're the same. So the way our organisation works, we have a set of clinical priorities every year, which we constantly evolve, although we have a few that we call enduring priorities. So mental health and cancer are enduring priorities for the college. But every year we have about 5 clinical priorities. Some will be big, important topics that cover a vast proportion of our patients, and others will be quite niche, and that's deliberate strategy, because we can't do everything all the time. But also we have policy campaigns. And so I've just up there, those are our policy priorities for the current year. And the first thing is about resource and campaigning for resource. And we are a 4-nation college. It's not just about England. I'm conscious we've got colleagues here from the 4 nations. The workforce, recruiting more clinicians. We've got these promises of more GPs and more allied healthcare professionals. We need to get them, and how? Retaining those that we have. I've mentioned resilience already, but also getting people back to practice. There is a large cadre of GPs who left professional practice in their 30s and 40s, burnt out, frustrated, bitter, angry. How can we help them back? We have a phenomenal resource there that we have a responsibility to nurture, to support, and encourage back where possible. But also workload, and this is really the stuff where the academic community has so much help to input here. How we work better with our allied healthcare professional colleagues, who should be doing what, who are the right people to see patients in what environment, innovation and technology, and patient safety. And the interface between primary and secondary care, more important than ever. These boundaries that we have put in, these artificial divides, these constructs called hospitals and GP surgeries, are not terribly helpful to patients. And that whole interface working is recognised far better now than it ever was before. And we're looking at that and how best to break these things down. I love a good simple metaphor, and apologies to those of you who've heard me say some of this stuff before, but I think about a three-legged stool of healthcare. Health and social care is comprised of three elements that are interdependent, and if one is unstable, the others fall over. Primary or community or first point of contact care, secondary and specialist care, and social care. And we all know, those of us who are GPs particularly know, that if our social services in our area is a disaster, our workload goes up. Every hospital clinician knows that if social care is in a parlous state in the area, patients get stuck in hospital, which is the worst place to be with them when they should be at home or in their communities. We are all interdependent. We need to own that. We can't just dump work on colleagues. We have to be in it together. And I'm pleased that the other medical Royal Colleges really recognise this. And the House of Lords recently published a report about the sustainability of the NHS and the sustainability of social care, and that need for us to be joined up was clearly articulated there, which is good. In italics are a few things which are personal sort of missions of mine about general practice training and the review of our professional qualification, and my little bit about joy and spark. I put my happy jacket on today, okay, just to reinforce the joy mention. And my three-legged stool in the corner. Just in case you didn't know it, GPs are consultants in general practice, expert medical generalists. So for the avoidance of doubt, and for those who like to denigrate other professional specialities, we're consultants, get over it. Okay, my academic SWOT analysis. Again, now, this is not a perfect exercise. This really was me jotting some ideas down the other night as I was thinking what to say to you. Where are we now? And if you haven't done a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, just a simple little tool for thinking about where we are. Our strengths are numbers. Although as an academic community, we are, as a percentage, relatively small of our profession, we are still a huge academic community, and the quality of the stuff we produce is phenomenal. We should celebrate it. We have huge numbers. The patients are ours. 90% of patient contact happens in the community. Every patient, every person in the country is registered with a GP, or could be, or should be registered with a GP. They're all there. We have big data, and I'm going to talk a bit about big data in a minute. So, and we've got great structures, so we can do fab stuff with strength. Our weaknesses, it's a resource poor climate. We're all in it, although you go abroad. I was at WONCA, the European part of the World Organization of Primary Care conference a couple of weeks ago. And just in other parts of Europe, hearing the resource poor challenges that they have do make us realize that we are actually in a relatively good place in the academic world. It just doesn't feel like it when you want to do so big, exciting stuff. And we have I've mentioned the demoralized workforce. But the opportunities are myriad. In fact, let's do threats first and come back to opportunities, because that always feels more intuitive to me. I've mentioned professional denigration. Fear of change is pervasive in all organizations. Fear of change is inherent in us. It is born within us to be afraid of change, because status quo is easier. But if we do not change, we do not adapt and survive. If we do not adapt, we will not survive. We also know that in our heads. It's trying to believe it in our heart and have the courage to take change. And doing it together makes it easier. Attitudes and tide turning with primary care, it is happening right at the top of government, right at the top of the structures that define the way we work. People are talking differently about primary care. People want to know what we think because they recognise the authority with which we speak. And the more united we are, the more powerful we are. And we mustn't underestimate that. And the opportunities, we've had a great big promise. So I've mentioned the English GP Forward View set of promises. Trust me, the devolved nations would love a promise as big as the GP Forward View. There's a lot of cynicism about it because it's a set of promises that aim to deliver in full by 2020. That still feels like a long way away. But the money is starting to come through, the stuff is starting to come through, people are starting to come through, and most practices can identify one or two things that have started to happen. In my own, a patient turned around to me and said, "Oh, I'm having CBT next week, Dr. Helen. I only referred you a couple of weeks ago." Yes, they've got a new counsellor. In fact, they've got 3 new counsellors in the area, and now everybody can have CBT who needs it. Now, I know the service will be overwhelmed within a month, but it's still lovely to hear. Suddenly, Wi-Fi appeared in my practice. I thought, do we need Wi-Fi? We've got it. Okay, fine, I'll take it. It's fine. Little things are starting to happen. They're only small green shoots, but it is starting to trickle through, and the money is starting to follow. I saw the bank statement for our practice in May, and suddenly there was an extra chunk on the baseline. I said, "Oh, what's happened? Is that a back payment?" And they said, "No, that's the uplift to cover X, Y, and Z." Okay, so stuff's happening there, and hopefully as that comes through, it'll give people a little bit more headspace to do other things and to think bigger picture. The Chief Medical Officer talks about primary care. NHS England recognise the vital part that we play. Now is the time for us to act and work together. So, what research questions would I love answered? These were just a few that, again, I just jotted down as I was thinking about it. In my practice, I want to know how best to manage my really complicated patients. It's so much easier to do simple research on simple patients. You know, you do really high quality stuff on patients with one type of disease or one type of thing is fine, but if I can't translate it to my complex patients, it kind of is a ho-hum thing for the bog standard jobbing GP. So that's just the thing, and of course big data is going to really help us there. For me, new models of care, new models of working, there is so much excitement and so much money being thrown at new ways of working. We're not quite sure what really works. And I'm delighted that I think one of the work streams in the next session is about different ways of working and evaluating them. So knowing what works. And I would say that I don't need gold standard RCTs to tell me if a new system of triage of patients is absolutely fantastic. I just need to know that it's safe, and is it at least as good as what we've already got? So equivalence, safety, and any improvement on top of that is worth me giving it a go if it's not going to do harm. And I think thinking about our paradigm for our research evidence is important. When we think of what is it that we're evaluating, don't just apply our global gold standards to everything if they're not necessary, because we need speed and rapidity. Our patients deserve it. Anyway, other stuff there, you can read it, but you can see the sort of way my head space is, and I'm really interested in what you think are the big questions that need answering. Doesn't necessarily mean they're easy to get the funding for the answers, but they are what matters. Oh, this is a shot from the Chief Medical Officer's 5-year review. Now, this was released last week. If you haven't seen it, worth dipping into. Sally Davis, genomics, big, exciting genomics. Now, as a general practitioner, I feel in my daily practice, genomics is quite a long way away from Mrs. Smith from number 47, who's really upset because her cat's died and her chest got a bit worse. But actually, genomics is going to revolutionise the future. When I was a medical student, the whole genome hadn't been sequenced. Now, it's huge, it's absolutely vast. If we had a stack of paperback books, it would be 2.5, 3 times the height of this ceiling of if you put one person's genetic code in it. And it is an impressive bit of work. We're still not sure what the applications are going to be. We know some of them. But the reality is, during our lifetimes, and particularly those of you who are newer academics, during your lifetimes, it's going to change very significantly, and we need to know about it. The good stuff that you need to know from the report was that there will be continuing professional development for all healthcare professionals, so we all get it. What I was taught about it in genomics in medical school is so out of date, it's embarrassing. College Council discussed a really good paper about genomics and the importance of genomic medicine for the future, and we will keep revisiting it as this world evolves, recognising that as general practitioners it's not in our daily thing. However, one of my patients did phone me a couple of months ago and said, "Dr. Helen, I'm thinking of having my genome sequenced. I can have it done for £1,000. My son, who's an interventional radiologist in America, thinks it's a great idea." And I said, "Gosh, that's lovely." I said, "And why are you phoning me?" "Well, I was wondering if could I bring it in to go through it with you?" And I said, "Well, I'd be fascinated to see the memory stick or the side of the hard drive that the whole thing is on. I suspect it won't be all 32 or 23 million base pairs. However," I said, "I have no idea what it means." I said, "I don't think you'll know anybody anywhere who'll know what it means. They might be able to tell you half a dozen things that you have or haven't got or carry, But that's all. She didn't have her genome sequenced. Anyway, she saved £1,000 and went on holiday instead. But this is going to happen more and more. I work in middle-class Lichfield up the road. Trust me, it'll be inner-city deprived Birmingham before you know it, where people are coming and asking the same questions. The costs are going to come down and down and down. But it's worth flagging up that research funders are going to have to ask the question on application forms. Are you doing genomic analysis? Is that part of your study? And if not, why not? Now, clearly, if your research study is to chat to a bunch of GP trainees about their future career intentions, it is entirely inappropriate to talk about genetic sampling. It might be fascinating, but it's not relevant. But just be aware that box is going to appear. I don't think it's anything to fear. It's just another box to tick or untick. But just have a sentence ready. But of course, this throws up all the issues of data protection again. And today, I'm so glad it was launched today that I could talk about it. This was finally launched. This is the response to the Dame Caldecott review. Now, many of us as clinicians remember the care.data debacle of a few years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago, where we all got a leaflet dropped through the post saying that government was going to use our health data. In or out, what do you want to do, guys? And it was just a real, it was a difficult stink where a well-intentioned thing to access patients' data in a responsible way was badly marketed, badly sold to people, and not clearly thought through. This is the fallout. Dame Caldecott did a fantastic piece of work to review the whole thing, look at data standards. There's a lot of really technical stuff in there, and the government have now fully accepted all the recommendations in the review. That is unusual. For all recommendations to be accepted is very, very unusual. And this is going to be a big thing. It hasn't made a big splash in the news today. Probably that's fine, because big splashes usually mean the Daily Mail saying something is dreadful and we're all going to hell in a handcart. For those of you who are interested, it's on the front page of the Department of Health website today. There's a link near the bottom. It's about an 80-page document, but the exec summary is reasonably readable, and they're going to do an FAQs that we're working with them on. The college and the BMA have been heavily involved in influencing this, and we are pleased with the outcome. It's not perfect, but we are pleased with what we've got. The big thing is there won't be enough money to implement it in full and train people, but 'twas ever thus. But the good news for researchers is that big data is coming closer and easier. So I'd better leap on because I'm rambling. These are some of my suggestions. The college motto is cum scientia caritas, and that means scientific knowledge applied with compassion. We are scientists first. We have to be scientists first in what we do. We have to work with what works, and then we apply our art, our creativity, and our humanity to deliver great care. To be a great GP is to think of the whole patient, their social and psychological context, as well as the physical situation. We need the science before we can do the art, and this is where scholarship comes in. Scholarship's an old-fashioned word, but it's a word that's been raised recently by Joanne and colleagues from SAPC, making us think differently about everything. For some people, they think of academia and scholarship as only for the rarefied few, the very clever or the very geeky or whatever. And I would argue, and I know Joanne would argue, that scholarship is for us all. We all need to own it. Not everybody needs to do a PhD or an MD. Not everybody needs to be having brilliant ideas and putting in massive research applications. But we need to be encouraging all our colleagues in whatever clinical environment we are in to think as scientists first and then layer the compassion on afterwards. We need to encourage people to reflect on why they're doing what they do. If we want to improve and keep pushing forward the boundaries in care, we need to be reflective of what we do and why we do it. So scholarship as standard is going to be a mantra you hear more and more. If you can think of a better word than scholarship, I'd love to have it. But it actually is quite good to use an old-fashioned word sometimes because it makes people pause and think. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on that when we come to the questions. Our collaborations between our organisations have probably never been stronger. We're building and thriving. We're certainly rebuilding and thriving. And there's a lot of joint working going on. This is rather a long rambling slide, I'm sorry. You can see sometimes I do have stream of consciousness as I'm pulling these things together. But we have members on one another's boards. We have a lot of cross-fertilisation of ideas and very much working on the basis we're stronger together. Quickly tell you some of the stuff the college is doing in terms of research. We don't do research as a Royal College, okay? We encourage others, we celebrate others, we facilitate others, and we're hoping to do more and more dissemination of others' research. But you guys do research. The college is there to support you, to encourage you, and to help you where we can. Research Ready, many of you will know the Research Ready initiative has been running for several years now. There's over 1,000 practices in the country signed up to it, quite a simple, straightforward online application process to demonstrate minimum competency in undertaking research and basic standards. There's going to be an advanced option coming. There's a soft launch of that happening next week with a big launch in the autumn. And this is going to be for practices that really are working at a much higher level to deliver research, a charter mark if you like, and it'll be particularly suitable for practices involved in sort of CTIMP type work or sort of more commercial research. NAHR been very supportive of us going there, so if you're interested, watch this space. That'll be coming out soon. Our Research and Surveillance Centre, for the older ones of you in the audience, the Influenza Monitoring Service. For the last 50 years, we've been doing weekly reports on what respiratory diseases are circulating in the community. The whole organisation was set up 60 years ago, and so there'll be a few birthday celebration things this year. But over 200 practices submitting their data through on infectious diseases. If you've never seen any outputs of what they've done, search RSC respiratory or something like that, otherwise you get the Royal Shakespeare Company. And you'll find it very easily. And these are the sort of weekly reports that come out. So this is one I just screenshotted a couple of days ago. About this is the hay fever thing. It always amuses me. Every year we get a spike in hay fever. That is normal. But every year the college offers a story to the media, and every year they take it because it comes as a surprise to general public that hay fever happens every year. Anyway, hey ho, it's easy media. It's easy media. So you know, go to your pharmacist. It's great. Pharmacists are marvellous at this sort of thing. Anyway, these are the kind of reports that do loads of lovely graphs, loads of data. You'd be amazed that people just don't know it exists. So free resource there. And if you're interested in data, they are another source of one of the big data repositories and take applications for access to data in responsible ways. Research Paper of the Year. If you've done something great or one of your friends has done something great, think of nominating them for Research Paper of the Year. You don't have to be a GP. It is about primary care research. It has an impact. Some of the most amazing research, world-changing research in general practice has come and won awards through here. It's a real celebration of great academic stuff. It's open at the moment. I think, yes, still open. So please think about nominating somebody, a great paper you've seen in the last year. Scientific Foundation Board, we give money away to do research. Some of you here I know have had grants from the SFB up to £20,000. Not earth-shattering amounts, great for pilot stuff, great for new ideas and emerging ideas, and then some other fellowships we've given. But there's also practitioners' allowance grants up to £1,000. So for GPs, those are available for small amounts, really small stuff, but quite interesting to see what comes out of that. New partnership with the NIHR for research active practices to celebrate excellence and innovation. And there's awards for first 5 GPs, so newer GPs, and whole practice awards. Again, you might not be aware of those. And it's all fun, and it's all part of celebrating and promoting academic general practice. And as a college, we've restructured. We have a new set of programme boards to help us direct the way we work, to be a bit more streamlined and unified. And we have an innovation and research board. It was going to be called an innovation board on the basis where clearly innovation encompasses research. But then we had quite a discussion about the importance of putting research in the title. It's like sometimes you mustn't just assume that everyone will know what it means. It's the Innovation and Research Board. Martin Marshall, who's well known to many of you, who's my vice chair in the college and a professor at UCL, is leading that work stream. And there's some great stuff coming out of there. Some of it's still to be signed off, but some hints of what we're up to are in there. But lots of stuff about impact research and some ideas about how we can better promote what you are all doing using our networks. What we've got 52,000 members in 86 countries around the world. We have got tentacles, we have got publications, and we have got contacts that we can use to say there is great stuff. I know that at a personal level, if I'm meeting with a chief medical officer or meeting with Jeremy Hunt, I throw things at them and sort of say, yeah, didn't you know about this? Or there's this great organisation, and we connect people up. But we want to do it in a more standardised, comprehensive way, and we're keen to engage. So I think I'll bounce on from that. Loads and loads of resources and things there. But Ali Marsh, Ali, are you here? Alison Marsh, yes. Ali at the back there, if you want to know more about this stuff, Alison, give us another wave, Alison, people are only now turning around, is the lady to talk to, and she's leading on a huge amount of this stuff in the college. If you've got ideas, we'd love to hear them. So alison.marsh@rcgp.org.uk, and I'm stopping in a couple of minutes. Joy and sparkle. When we live in a dark and dismal world, people whinge and moan. I could just leave it there. We all need a safe space to vent. We all need a safe space to share what we're going through. We all need to heal. What we don't need to do is drag everyone else around us down with us. And one of my challenges is speaking to juniors and trainees, is hearing them say some of the terrible things they've heard their colleagues tell them about general practice. How awful it is, how terrible it is, how it's the worst job in the world. And I came up with this rather trite new statistical concept, which is the numbers needed to undo harm. The numbers of positive and uplifting things that somebody like me or you need to do to undo the harm of one big negative thing. And the sad thing is, I thought it was going to be about 5 or 6, half a dozen. It's far, far more than that. Turns out, people have done research on this stuff. Lufthansa will tell you it's 17. If you have a bad experience on a Lufthansa flight, it will adversely impact 17 other people. They've got to do 17 good things. I'm thinking at the moment it's 12, 14 numbers needed to undo harm. If you're having a bad day, and we all have bad days, share it with a colleague, share it with a trusted friend, get some help, of course. If you're having a good day, tell a trainee, tell a junior colleague, remind them what an amazing consultation in general practice is like, remind them what an amazing thing it is to be a clinician, to be that privilege of being in the dark and complex place of people's lives, of being the trusted one, the one that really makes a difference and helps them through, the person who is there for the entire patient for their life course. So do share the good stuff, not just the bad. Then these are very intelligent people. They will see bad stuff. They will pick it up and perceive it. You don't have to ram their faces in it. So I'm sure the people in here are not the ones I'm talking to, but think about it when you're speaking to colleagues. I know there isn't a medical school dean in the country. There isn't a senior academic in the country who would openly say that general practice is an inferior speciality. They wouldn't denigrate in that way. But there are plenty of people out there who do. We should not stand for it. It is completely unacceptable. It is completely unprofessional. And we all have a responsibility to stand up and call it out when we're seeing it. Yes, humour and banter, we all need a laugh. But there is a fine line between banter and denigration, and we need to be acutely aware of it because it does adversely affect our juniors. Research tells us it does. So anyway, we're having a good day. Tell a junior colleague, please. And do you know how much negativity and shit I've taken on social media for saying this? I rest my case. So we all need a bit of joy and sparkle in our lives. Thank you for being so patient. I think I will stop it there and take questions. So thank you all very, very much.
Okay, thanks, Helen. That was brilliant, and it's given us lots to think about. Does anyone have any questions for Helen?
I hope you do, otherwise it's going to be an embarrassing 15 minutes. We could just sit down, actually.
I've got a question for you, actually, and it's around how the college can perhaps help us with communicating the findings of our research to some of our policymakers. There was some discussion today in a session we had on alternatives to the face-to-face consultation that often what appears in policy documents doesn't necessarily bear any resemblance to what we are finding in our research.
Okay.
And is that a consequence of us not communicating that very well, or is it just that we're not sending it to the right places? And I wondered, given the college is so engaged with academic primary care, how they might help us with that.
I mean, okay, so firstly, stuff related to, you talk about consultations and methods and new models of working, think that sort of thing? Yeah, okay. So this is my bread and butter policy stuff. I want to know. So personally, I want to know. So number one, contact me. chair-rcgp@rcgp.org.uk. It's really easy to find. But actually, we have a whole policy team. We have a team of really bright, clever people helping us develop our policy, bring stuff together. And helping with workload is one of our key streams. We've got people whose job it is to do this stuff, but they're not telepathic. They need the information coming into them, because the problem is stuff doesn't turn up in search engines until it's been out there for quite a while. Stuff that's abstract and posters can be incredibly valuable, but it doesn't make it onto our agenda. So tell us, send it to us. We keep databases of this stuff, so when the opportunities come, we can use them. And we want to be feeding this stuff in, because I mean, we're a 4-nation college, as I said. I'll just use NHS England as an example, but we do this in all 4 nations. When stuff comes up and policy things come up, we are invited to review and look at what's there. And actually, if we say, well, actually, so where did that come from? Oh, well, a practice in, Burton told us that this was the way they did it. I said, well, okay, so that's one practice. That's not, that's anecdote, that's not evidence. Sometimes reminding people the difference is quite powerful. And they said, well, no, we've got to practice, they said it works. So there are some people we're dealing with who don't necessarily think of research in the way we do. So having stuff to hand and easy to search, so send it in. So policy team at the college are a great place to be. But also, there are really clever people in some of these organisations who desperately want to do stuff that works. You can tell them, you can write to them. Your priority as an academic is about peer review and publication. The problem is that doesn't necessarily get to the most powerful places, and it is that tension. So we feel that we should help you be the conduit. So I'm hoping we'll open some more formal portals for doing that. You've got to publish. I'm not suggesting for a second you don't. But stuff that isn't necessarily going to make it high up on people's, if they're not seeing it in the BMJ or the BJGP or the Lancet or whatever, it doesn't mean it's not really important and relevant in terms of policy. And we know that stuff can be hard to get published in high impact journals, which is of course crazy, but that's just the way the publishing system is an impact. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Thanks, that's all very positive. Does anyone have any questions for Helen?
Yeah.
Robert.
Hi, Helen. Robert Walton here at Warwick. A very specific thing, actually.
Yeah.
You mentioned the genomics, and it's one of the exciting things that that we've got coming over these next few years. And a couple of points to make about it. People often say, as indeed you yourself did, and far be it from me to contradict our leader, but that it's terribly complicated.
I was bending through. Yeah.
That it's terribly complicated, and the huge amount of education. I don't think so. If you look at, why is someone's plasma sodium 129? It's quite a complicated thing to do, but we're doing it day in, day out as GPs. There are common causes, there are rare causes, sorting them all out. And I think genomics will fall into exactly the same category, actually, as plasma sodium. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing, I think it's for us to drive the agenda. I think it's for us to say, to seize the day, essentially, and say, look, this is what we want to do. These are the problems that we need to sort out. Can you help us with it? Because at the moment, the sort of research literature is littered with all sorts of initiatives where genomics have been tried to be brought in, imposed on primary care, without actually seeing what the needs are. So seize the day, I think.
Fantastic. I'm definitely a carpe diem sort of girl. So I take your challenge. You're absolutely right. The principles of it are actually not that complicated when you get your head around it. But I do regard the paper that came to our council, I think it was about 18 months ago, about genomics, was a fab piece of professional development for me, because there was a language that I needed to update on. It's not that difficult, but it is you do need a core vocabulary to understand what people are talking about. And you need to understand both the limitations of what we've got at the moment, but also to have a glimpse of the potential. It shouldn't be difficult to bring people up to speed. You're absolutely right. When you take professionals who are already very literate in scientific stuff. So fair challenge, and I'm hoping the education element of it will be very simple, straightforward, snappy, kind of 15, 30-minute max tutorials, online stuff. This is all you need to know. In terms of the potential, it's really interesting because it does feel the last decade genomics was going to be the next huge thing, and there's been a lot of disappointment along the way. But there are lots of pockets of wonderfulness as well, and certainly in the rarer diseases, it's huge work. I think you're right in terms of the potential for the normal everyday, and why does this family seem to always run a low sodium, picking that one in particular, or a high sodium, or they're always their blood indices are always a bit different. And we know that there's a huge amount that we just don't know and understand yet, and it will open things up and perhaps save a huge amount of unnecessary investigation and overdiagnosis in due course. So I think you're right. I think it's fair. I love the seize the day idea, and I thought that's something for you to think about in terms of as a community about what questions should we be asking and who should we be talking to. And it's just find yourself a friendly genomist, what's the trendy term nowadays, and ask the question, what's the art of the possible? And those are definitely coffee conversations in academic institution corridors with the people you might not otherwise thought of holding hands with. So yeah, fab. Susan, I'd love to hear how that works out.
I think there was a question over here.
And then Ms. Kane. Hiya. Oh.
Hi, Helen. It's Adrian Brown from St George's. I know you've been a real inspiration for the students at St George's as a former president of the Students' Union, coming to talk to them and hopefully that will spread throughout other universities. I want to ask you about teamwork. Sometimes students say that they've been on practice, been on placements, and the GP's stuck in their room. They just see them in their room. They don't have that sort of teamwork that they see in hospitals where all the junior doctors together are circulating around, and that seems to be a factor. Is there any way that the RCGP, us as GPs or academics, can help promote some teamwork or more There is teamwork there, but
Huge amount of teamwork there, isn't there? We know good practices work best when they work as a team, where they talk and they communicate and they share and they learn together and play together. Well, that's really sad if students report that stuff, and I'm sure that's a reflection on the stress that the system is under. One of my photographs, one of my metaphors is about the orchestra. I talk about GPs as being conductors of the primary care orchestra. We're not just conductors, we're conductors and we're lead violinists, if you like, to extend the metaphor. I do like a metaphor. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to make beautiful music to create great care that wraps around the patient. You have to work as a team. I would like to think we're doing quite a lot of stuff in this at the moment, both in terms of our work on the role of allied healthcare professionals and how we interact with each other, who should be doing what and why we do it. There's a role for the academic community in helping us test these hypotheses and check out the safety stuff. But I think there's something that all of us can be doing here about team working. You know, there is leading by example as well. In my own practice, what keeps me sane is coffee. And it's not the caffeine, it's the conversation that happens around the caffeine. Caffeine's nice too, but so, okay, really interesting. I'll think about that in terms of if there's more we can be doing. Have you got any ideas?
I think it is that, being able to demonstrate that that there is that interaction and with colleagues, having structures and other ways. I think it's getting them involved with the juniors in the practice as well. Yeah. Because they can see people who are sort of just similar ages themselves. But there still is that gap. That's between primary care and secondary care that students perceive in terms of teamwork. They do,
and what's interesting is that actually many junior doctors, you know, we know the sadness the last year or two of junior doctors and the disenfranchisement they're feeling, and a lot of that has been about the breakdown of what we probably had as junior doctors, which was the team and the firm structure and that team working. So, and this is endemic throughout medicine. Interestingly, I've been privileged to go and visit a lot of practices as well as lovely events like this, and the CQC outstanding practices I've been to, the thing that seems to sort of they have in common, they're not necessarily big glamorous practices in big glamorous buildings. What they have is an ethos of being a team, of all being in it together, ownership, and interesting, a lot of collaboration with patients as well, and the patients being part of that team, and that I think is quite a leap of faith for some people to take, but protecting that team time, and whether it's coffee in my practice, others try and do lunch, although if you believe the Daily Mail, apparently we all have 3-hour lunch breaks. So yeah, thank you. I think it's a good challenge. I think we should keep, perhaps as educationists, there's a lot of educators here as well, the heads of teaching and all the educators, reminding our practices, our teaching practices, that this is an important thing to show. It's as important to show as some of the clinical stuff that we show them as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Now everyone's working.
Can we get a mic at the back, please?
And should we get Kate at the front while we're waiting?
Yes.
Kate, do you want to shout out while we're waiting for the...
Yeah, I'll shout.
Yeah, you got that. You got Jack.
That's Kate O'Donnell from Glasgow, so I can shout. Thank you.
You said that, not me.
Yes. And also chair of SAPC, and thank you, that was just fabulous. You touched on that there in terms of the way that the wider NHS, but general practice is portrayed in the media. And my colleague Hamish Foster talked yesterday about out-of-hours care, and if your guess is it's going to be bad in the media, it's much, much worse. Yeah. How do we actually turn the tide in the way in which general practice and healthcare is being portrayed in the media at the moment?
We get out there, we talk to them, we show them, we rebuke it when it comes up. And I've started responding to some of these negative stories by writing back to the Times, writing back to the Daily Mail and getting this stuff. And it's amazing, they do publish these letters, I was dismayed by your, unhelpful portrayal of a very constructive piece of research that showed how wonderful the care we're providing is and how it's improving, and yet you managed to make it into negative story stuff. So there's that, there's the don't take it lying down, it's slap back. Don't be afraid of the media, because they're going to publish something. It better be much better than to publish your story and your research than it to be full of absolute flim-flam, which it can be. So don't be afraid of it, engage with it, and don't be afraid to back a bit, but also getting out there and talking about the wonderful stuff. No, good news doesn't sell the same way as bad news does. We have to accept that. The media, they have to sell papers. But sometimes good news gets through, and people believe good news far more readily than they believe the nonsense. I mean, I've seen a wonderful slide of somebody who's got all the headlines from, I think, the Daily Express or the Daily Mail on statins. And there's about 20 headlines in a year, headlines of a newspaper on statins, and they're equally weighted as to statins are horrendous and statins are a wonderful story. So the public are really confused and they want good quality evidence. So if you're asked to give an expert opinion on the latest drug, give it. Check with your institution as to what you can and can't say, but don't be afraid to talk about what you know, because this is the stuff we do know. And I'm certainly trying to respond to as many of these questions as we can. What's your view on this study? What's your view on that? The problem is you've got to be very agile and turn it around quickly because they work to stupid deadlines. I'm not able to do a literature search when I reply to, when I ask for a comment. I've usually got about an hour, which means somebody drafts something for me, somebody throws me the paper that the comment is about, and then I have to use my common sense as a clinician. So there is something, you are taking a risk at times, but actually the vast majority of the time, just our basic clinical knowledge is enough to answer, because they don't want a specialist opinion, they want an average GP's opinion. They just come to us as specialists. So, and certainly, don't be afraid of the media, engage with it. They're going to print rubbish, get over it, accept it. But when it really is terrible, slap them back. Top tips, I hope.
We're just going to go...
That's the basis I'm working on anyway.
I'm going to go at the back to Harry in the corner.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Harry. Where's Harry?
Harry Longman.
Hi, Harry.
I'm an engineer married
man.
to a doctor
Yay!
and Church of England. But I've been involved with...
Methodist, that's okay, we'll take it.
I've been
yeah.
involved with primary care for 8 years.
Yeah.
This is the first time I have heard a leader of the profession proclaim with a passion and without reservation the joy of general practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. I'll keep proclaiming it.
We've got time for a couple more, actually. So if we go to Richard at the back.
Hi, Richard Bagan in Plymouth. Thanks very much. I agree with virtually everything you said. I was wondering about one thing that we could take a step further. I think the issues about new models of care and dealing with workforce changes and new systems are going to require an even more radical change of how we see evaluation and research and the current innovations that are coming up from the practice. So the NIHR timescales just don't work for this kind of way of thinking. So we probably need some more structural things in place to capture all of this innovation and evaluate it. And maybe we should look at a stronger partnership around that particular issue in the future.
I'd really like that. I'd really, really like that. I do feel that, I mean, some of the data stuff that's going to come through should give us ways of looking at it. I mean, there is a real passion from the top to get good data and to use it to help prove or disprove stuff that's going on. And I think it's something about seizing the day, and perhaps my talk was back to front. I should have done my SWOT analysis at the end, but now is the time to try and do stuff. And you're right, the NIHR timescales just don't work for this. So I've tried to ask Sally Davis about can we do things differently and so on. And I think by the time big decisions are made, it'll be gone. And it's how we do things cheaply to get answers to meaningful questions. And then we can follow up with the big glamorous stuff in due course to prove that what we're already doing is great, which is nice. But yeah, I'd be interested to talk about that. And I think some of the stuff the Innovation Board are doing will hopefully tap into that. So please, if you're interested, we want to talk to you.
Thanks, Helen. We've reached the end of our time today, but thank you so much for being with us today, and hopefully everyone else can join me in thanking you again.
Thanks, guys.